What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic and excellent spirits. Another live stream here on a Wednesday, as you already know, Eastern Time, the 16th of July. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what's happening in the world of sports. And even though sports is kind of low-key, we know baseball's carrying a lot of the weight here, and boy, do we got some weight to distribute, because after what we saw there last night and with the reverberations throughout the sports world about the way that game ended, and I'm going to unpack that quite a bit. So we'll definitely get that rolling in a second, on top of anything else that may be on your mind, on top of anything else that may be going on. Yes, I get it that the Jets signed those two big players, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. We'll touch on that a little bit. Even the Open Championship, which is the final golf major of the year. But obviously, this is going to be very baseball-centric, and I can't wait for everybody to hop on board so we could get at it and discuss it. But prior to all that, of course, as always, share your thoughts, please. The chat room is going to be on and popping. It should be a very spirited and probably even funny live stream here, because with what had taken place there last night and even the last 2 days, if you want to get into the home run derby. But for that, and for those, whether it's your first time or not, don't be shy. Type in whatever it is that's on your mind. If you disagree with what it is I'm saying, if you agree, if you have a suggestion, comment, doesn't matter, please do so, and we'll unpack it. And I see a comment there, so we'll get to that in a minute. Of course, for those who are watching the replay, and I feel like I'm on top of the mic, just kind of swallowing it as it's coming back into my headphones. Maybe if I just talk like this, how does that sound? I'm sure a lot better. But I can't help it because I'm passionate, and I don't want to yell, or this isn't an unnatural voice. This is just me speaking my thoughts, feelings, whatever it may be. And yes, it does come at an amplified level. So I'll try not to distort the audio any worse than what it can be, especially when it comes to me getting into what it is I have to say. But for those who are watching on the replay, please leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to follow up as well. Just because you're not a part of the live stream, shame on you for not being here. No, I'm kidding. So you could go ahead, leave a comment. I'll follow up, whatever that may be. And again, don't be shy for those who are watching this on the replay. Now, if I had to take a guess who this one comment is, it's probably either Valby or Biozio. And no, it's not. It's the baseball purist, my man. Be honest, you're a hardcore sports fan. Did you know? I'll be honest with you, baseball purist. I did not know that was the case. I swear to you, I didn't think that there was going to be a swing off for whatever. I mean, I guess that's going to be the latest terminology when it comes to what's happening in sports. You have walk off. Now there's a swing off. I did not know that. I haven't really followed the All-Star game over the years. And just like I said last week, if you recall, the last All-Star game that I watched from start to finish was the game at Citi Field, which was actually, come to think of it, 12 years ago today, July 16th. It was a hot night. I'll never forget. It was in the 90s, sunny day. I went with a dear friend of mine. I'll give her a shout out, Maria Cano, who worked for HBO at the time, and was able to get tickets. And I was shocked. I said, what the hell? Yes. She knows how much of a big sports fan I am, obviously baseball. And yeah, that was a rough watch, especially after the second inning. But since then, I haven't really watched any of the festivities when it's come to the home run derby. One year I actually did watch the home run derby, was 2017. That was in Miami because that was Aaron Judge's first home run derby, and Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, that was a monster lineup when it came to the home run derby that year. But yeah, I haven't really followed it. I haven't really watched. I haven't really gotten into it. So yes, I know you could probably say right there, baseball purist, you're a phony. Come on, man. You got to know this. Well, the All-Star game doesn't mean as much as it once did. I mean, listen, I'm 56 years old, so I remember the All-Star game, and I could chapter and verse. I could go through all the All-Star games. In fact, the first All-Star game I watched was 1976, which was the Bicentennial in Philadelphia. I remember watching that. And then, of course, the following year was in 77, which was right after the blackout in New York. And the blackout was July 13th. And what was the date on the All-Star game that year? Maybe it was the 15th. I got to go back and look at that. I should know that. But I remember it was, and I wasn't even in New York. I actually went on a family trip. I was 8 years old, went to Niagara Falls, and then came south. Actually ended up in Massachusetts. That's where I watched the All-Star game. And the temperature in New York that day, I'm sure you can look that up, was 102 degrees. That was a high. And that was the first inning where they hit home runs left and right. The National League got up to a 4-0 lead, and they ended up winning the game because the National League dominated the All-Star game during that decade and even during into the 80s. And yeah, that's how far back I go with the All-Star game. And I can tell you all the All-Star games after that. And I don't even need to look them up as far as the venues. Now, the score, of course, I'd have to look up, but I remember the venues. I could go from that to even 1990, 78. The game was in, I think it was in LA that year, or maybe in San Diego. Well, I know this for sure. It was either, I want to say LA in 78, Seattle 79, where Lee Mazzilli should have been the MVP, and rest in peace to Dave Parker was the MVP. 80 was in San Diego. 81 was in Cleveland. That was the strike year, if you remember, or they split the year, but it was a strike. The game was in Cleveland. That was a good game, 5-4. Mike Schmidt, Gary Carter hitting home runs. Ken Singleton had a home run of Tom Seaver. 82 was in Montreal. 83 was in Comiskey. That was the Fred Lynn first Grand Slam in All-Star Game history of Atlee Hammaker. 84 San Francisco, who could forget, Dwight Gooden. 85 in Minnesota. 86 in Houston. 87 in Oakland. 88 at Riverfront. That's where Dwight Gooden started that game, as well as the game he started in 86. 89 was in, I was going to say Toronto, but that was in 91. That was in Toronto. 89, the game was in, Anaheim. How can you forget? Bo Jackson hitting the ball almost to L.A. 90 was in Wrigley. I know all these games. I've watched them. I've followed them. I remember the venues. I was all on top of it. So baseball purists, I know you can get at me and be like, hey, I'm a diehard sports, and I am to the core, as you know. I know you've been on the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you jumping on board. But yeah, the All-Star game has lost its luster, man. And I don't know how old you are, baseball purist. Listen, based on your photo there, you look like a young whippersnapper. Not to kind of sound like an old man by saying that, young whippersnapper. But yeah, I could go through all those old baseball All-Star games. And the last one to 2013, because after that, I know 2014 was in Minnesota. 2015, what was the game in 2015? 2016 was San Diego. 2017 was Miami. The game in 2015, well, I have to think about that. Where was the game in 2015? And I'm going off the top of the dome, people. I'm not going to Google. I'm not, no. 2015. 2012 was in Kansas City. I have to almost go chronologically. 2012 was in Kansas City. 2011, St. Louis, I think was 20. I think it was Anaheim 2010, St. Louis 2011, or that could flip-flop. I want to say St. Louis was 2010 and Anaheim was 2011. What was 2015? Anyway, I don't want to bore you by me thinking about former All-Star games, but listen, nevertheless, I'm all over it. And I guess we could segue to what happened there last night, and maybe even the last 2 days for that matter, because let's face it, last night's All-Star game, the way it ended was an All-Star shame. And I didn't watch. Now, of course, I saw highlights. I was on top of it from that regard, and I get it. Oh, Jay Reels, how could you really get a feel for the game if it was highlights? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. We all know it's an exhibition. We all know it doesn't mean what it once was for both of these leagues. Obviously, with interleague being incorporated in 1997 to the Major League Baseball landscape, that you don't really have that true essence of an All-Star game because of interleague play. And even prior to that, where you've had scenarios of so many players moving via free agency, it's not like it was in the 70s. It's not like it was even in the early to mid-80s, because you knew that in the National League, and I'll go back to the 70s. I'll take that 77 All-Star team. In the 70s, you knew Joe Morgan was on the Reds. You knew Pete Rose was on the Reds, Johnny Bench. You knew Steve Garvey was with the Dodgers. You knew Dave Winfield at the time, San Diego, before he went to the Yankees in 81. You knew a lot of those players were on one team. They didn't bounce around. And I understand Joe Morgan was a San Francisco Giant, and I believe prior to that was a Houston Astro, a Colt 45, before becoming a Red. But we all know that his Hall of Fame bulk of his career came in Cincinnati. And then in the American League, it's the same deal. Now, I know 77, Reggie was with the A's and the Orioles for 1 year, and I believe Reggie may have been on that team in 77. But you already know that the players in the American League at that time were on one team. They weren't bouncing around. They weren't on 3 or 4 teams prior to making an all-star team. So even as you get to the mid-90s where free agency was a lot more prevalent, players bouncing around, and then obviously with interleague, I'm not going to say destroyed the all-star game, but certainly the luster and the bloom was coming off that rose to where today it's not the same. These players aren't playing 7, 8, or even 9 innings or getting 4 at-bats where the one star. Now, I'm going back to the 60s, let's say like Willie Mays, but I'm sure if I pulled up and I'll just use the 77 All-Star game for an example. I'm sure if I pulled up how many at-bats Johnny Bench got or Pete Rose, they had probably minimum 3 and quite possibly 4 at-bats. They played the entire game. So it wasn't a situation where they got 2 at-bats and they were gone. Or a starting pitcher usually got 3 innings back then. They didn't get the 1 inning that you see now. And I get it that they're investments, and I get it. It's a situation where they're not going to try to blow their arm out. I mean, please, it's an all-star game. They're not going to try to throw 100 miles an hour unless you're just going to pitch in that 1 inning where you know you could just air it out. But I don't want to hear that in 2025 that if Paul Skeens would have pitched 3 innings, that it's, oh, my God, how could we do that? We want to see him pitch for 3 innings. We want to see him go through that lineup one time. Why not? So I don't want to hear that, oh, well, in this day and age, you have to have everybody pitch an inning. To me, that's complete nonsense. Why can't they have, let's say, Aaron Judge? He should play all 9 innings. Why not? And that's in an American League or in a National League. Who's the one guy? Maybe you want to see Fernando Tatis Jr. play 9 innings? Did he start the game? I can't even tell you that. I'm sure he probably got elected by the fans as a starter. Or choose whomever you want. You have the one guy that's going to play the 9 innings. And you can substitute throughout the rest of the diamond on who you're going to relieve after whatever, the 3rd inning, 4th inning, or let's say in the 5th inning. You want them to get 2 at-bats? Great. But that's why the All-Star game is not the same. And I see some comments. I'll get to them in a second. But I couldn't sit through that. So based on what I gathered last night, I know that Ketel Marte had the 2-run double. And then Pete Alonso at the 3-run homer. I'm thinking, oh, maybe Alonso will be the MVP if it's a 5-4 game, knowing that his home run was the difference. But even with a 6-0 lead, the American League came all the way back, and they tied it until you got this swing off between Kyle Schwarber and Junior Caminero, and I think that's what it was because it's not as if they had a bunch of other players. This isn't an NHL shootout in a regular season where you're going to have multiple players shoot to see who's going to score and then obviously win the game. But that's what it came down to. If you recall, and this is, I get it, 17 years ago, the All-Star game at the old Yankee Stadium. Didn't they play 15 innings that game? Why can't we get to at least the 12th inning? And I understand the game was long as it was to begin with. With the home run derby at the end, I believe it was about 4 hours, a little bit over 4 hours, which is way too long. But why is that the case? Because you're bringing in pitcher after pitcher after pitcher. You're substituting left, right, sideways, up, and down. And it's a situation where the game is going to be prolonged. So, of course, it's going to be compromised in that regard. And I get it's not going to be a tidy 3 hours package for everybody to watch. But why can't they go in extra innings? And I understand you had that problem back in 2002, the game in Milwaukee, where Bob Brenly and Joe Torre ran out of pitchers, and they had to call the game a tie. And if you remember, the following year, which the game was at the old Comiskey, I'm going to call it Comiskey Park, whatever the name was then and what it is now, who cares? But the game actually was hinged on which league wins the game that will have home field advantage in the World Series. And that happened for maybe a decade and a half before they said, enough with the home field advantage. And then it went back to just its normal self to where now it ends in a tie where Schwarber wins the home run derby. I mean, come on. That's like having the NBA All-Star game. Let's say if it's tied after 4 quarters, they're going to go to a 3-point contest. or the Pro Bowl, which is the biggest joke of all, it's going to be settled by who hits the longest field goal. It's not for me. I understand I'm going to sound like the old man. Get off my lawn. This is not the way it should be played. And it shouldn't. I understand you're not going to play 18 innings. I get it that it's not going to go into the wee hours of the night. Get to a 12th inning. You want to put the ghost runner on second? Fine. I get it. And because it's an all-star game, that's where the ghost runner should be involved. Even in the regular season. And I understand I've grown accustomed to the ghost runner, whatever. But I'd rather them get rid of it altogether. But the all-star game is perfect for the ghost runner. Why not have that? And see what's going to happen. Chances are somebody's going to get a base knock, drive that run in, and then the National League, who has last licks, will see whether or not that they could tie or hopefully win the game in the bottom of the 10th. So it went to a swing off. Thank you, baseball purists, for that. I mean, come on. I mean, what are we doing here? And again, I understand it's an exhibition. Oh, it's entertainment. Oh, it's this, it's that. You just took the whole integrity of the game that I knew as a boy, granted it was 100 years ago, as a boy, and just flushed it down the toilet. You ruined it, which even makes me not want to watch the game. Not that I have been watching it, but am I crazy for saying that? Am I out of bounds? Or in this case, am I outside the white lines? How about that? I mean, it's a farce. It's a joke for it to end in a tie. In 2002, it was a disgrace because of the mishandling of the pitching staffs and how they ran out of pitchers. And I think that went to the 11th inning, if I'm not mistaken. So at least it went to the 11th. And look that one up. As a matter of fact, I'll look it up even now before I get your comments. That All-Star game in 2008, which had the great home run derby by Josh Hamilton, who I believe didn't even win it, but he hit moonshots. And I'll never forget, I was playing softball that night for my old firm that I used to work for. Actually, this was 2 firms ago. And that was another hot night, sweltering. And I'll never forget because I had to take the train from 161st Street. I had to transfer. And I could hear the crowd just go crazy. And obviously, I'm not watching it. I think I may have recorded it because it was the last All-Star game at the old Yankee Stadium. And just to see Hamilton hit bomb after bomb after bomb was certainly a sight to behold. And I'm sure you can find that on YouTube if you didn't watch it. I would suggest you go check that out because that was a spectacle. And to think he didn't even win. All right, let's see. Yeah, that game was, here's the box score, perfect. 2008, July 15th. So it was 17 years ago yesterday. And yes, I was right. That game went 15 innings. And it was almost 5 hours. I understand. You could say, well, Jerry Rose, that was 17 years ago. All right, it wasn't 1978 or 98. It was in the century. So you mean to tell me they couldn't go to extras? They had to go to a home run derby? Not this guy. And listen, I get it. All sports, not just baseball, they're pivoting. They're trying to tweak certain rules, changes to either improve the sport, to make the game faster, whatever. And that's happening across the board. NFL trying to change rules, NBA, etc. They just ruined the integrity with that last night, and that was a disaster. It just was. And one last thing. Let me go back to that 77 All-Star game just to see what the date was. I want to say it could be July 15th as well. No, that was actually later, July 19th. And I thought so because the blackout of 77 was July 13th. And I'll never forget. That I remember. Mets were at home, I believe, playing the Cardinals, and the game wasn't on TV. But I was watching, get ready for this. Oh, talk about showing my age. I was watching Beretta. Remember that show, Robert Blake? And I believe he had the parakeet or the whatever bird that he had. He was a detective crime show. And it was about 9:10-ish, 9:12, and I was in my apartment in the Bronx with a fan, no AC. And it was my mom, my Uncle Mark, shout out to him, Mark Vega, also another big Met fan. And we're watching the Beretta, and all of a sudden, TV went out. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And we look outside, all the lights are out, people are scrambling around, wondering what the hell's going on. And I lived in the Northeast Bronx at the time, and it was a situation where, yeah, it was somewhat chaotic. Now, not as chaotic as some of the video that you've seen where a lot of people broke into electronic stores, supermarkets, and were looting left and right. But yeah, there was just chaotic outside because nobody knew what the hell was going on. And that was the blackout. And I remember we didn't get power until the next day, I would say right around 6 p.m. So we couldn't open the refrigerator. Obviously, we didn't have any light that evening. And then the next day, my mom, don't open the refrigerator because obviously we didn't want anything to spoil. So, yeah, now that I'm going through a little J-Reels history as a boy, but the All-Star game was 6 days later. And, yes, I believe it was that weekend then that I went because that was a Wednesday. That weekend I went to Niagara Falls. And then on the way back, July 19th, was when the All-Star game was. And yes, that was at the old Yankee Stadium. And funny how I'm talking about the 77 All-Star game at Yankee Stadium and then the 2008 All-Star game, or at least the home run derby when it comes to that. All right, so now you got that out of the way. I'm going to get back to the baseball, not only just the All-Star shame, if you guys want to unpack that, whatever, and I'm going to get to the comments right now. Let's see. Oh, my God, baseball purist, thank you so much. Great American Ballpark. Yes, that was 2015. I believe that was what? Didn't Todd Frazier win the home run derby that year? And yeah, I drew blanks. And the previous one in Cincinnati was 88. That I remember because Doc Gooden pitched. So excellent baseball purist. I appreciate that. My guy Nike. Last night Alonso was robbed if it wasn't for him. Schwarber. Home run derby just saying style great. Man, yeah, listen, Alonso, and like I mentioned that, yes. If the National League would have won even 5-2, Alonso would have made the difference, or 6-2 would have made the difference of having that home run. He would have been the All-Star Game MVP. And now come to think about it, has any Met player, I don't think there's been a Met player that's won an All-Star Game. I know Piazza did in 96 in Philadelphia, but he was with the Dodgers. Any Mets win I should know this, but no, I don't think any. Now we know Alonso's won home run derbies, no big whoop. But I don't think any Met player has won the All-Star Game MVP. And I'm going to confirm that. Have any Met player? I don't think so. I would have to say no. Please, I should know that. Won the. All right. And the answer is, drumroll. Just like I thought. Oh, wait a second. Oh, right. You're going back to 75. I'm thinking more recently. And he actually shared that, right, with Bill Madlock, the All-Star Game MVP. And that's weird because think about it. John Matlack was a pitcher and was actually Rookie of the Year back in 72, I believe. And Bill Madlock, who was a great hitter, Cubs, but he also was on that Pirate team in 79, won a bunch of batting titles. And again, that's split. So no Met player, because I'm thinking Met player who won it by himself, not this situation where there were co-MVPs. So that was this game in 75, which I believe was in Milwaukee. And that was the year before I started watching the All-Star games, as I mentioned 76. That was the bicentennial, etc. So that's what you have there. Now, let me get to the other comments that we have. Whoop, I think I lost my screen here. All right, here we go. Nope, that's the wrong one. Next comment. Baseball purist, my guy. Back then, no participation trophies, every team you get. Right. That's it. And yes, Nike, was a cockatoo? If you're still on. Yes, Fred. Very good, Nike. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the confirmation there. But back to the baseball purist. Right. You didn't have a scenario where. Now, you did have, I believe, there was always a representation of a player, even if you were a bad team. And I know that those Met teams in the late 70s, early 80s, they were awful. That's where you had John Stearns, I know, was on the 78 team. I believe the 78 and 80 team. Mazzilli was on the 79 team. Met player 81, I'd have to think, who was the Met representative? Well, right. Generally, if there was a player that was on a bad team that wasn't represented, then oh well. But you're right. There wasn't a situation where, we have to give an all-star nod to this particular player. And then now I couldn't even tell you. I know you have a lot of first-time players, et cetera, which, that happens. I get it. But, excuse me, that is a situation where with the all-star game, I don't know what else to add, people. Excuse me yet again. I could go on to other things. But, yeah, to me, it was just a shame. It shouldn't come to that. And I understand this isn't a situation where it's a regular season game or obviously a playoff game, but have a result. There needs to be an end result. And the way to do that is to do it the good old-fashioned way. not based on some gimmick to end the game and therefore be remembered forever as Kyle Schwarber being the MVP because he won a home run derby in extra innings. Yeah, that doesn't fly with me. So, and look, I didn't even get animated for that. So it goes to show you. All right. Now you want me to get animated? Let's talk about this. And listen, I guess I'll tip my hand here because tomorrow I was going to lead the podcast with this. Let's see what else is happening in sports today. Anything? No. Second half. I'm going to pull up some standings. Oh, excuse me. And here's what I'm going to suggest. Before I'm going to even take the standings off, I'm going to look at the main page here just in case people are going to chime in with comments. I think baseball, as I talked about on Monday's podcast, if you haven't listened, Apple, Spotify, of course on YouTube at JReels. I think the big thing about this second half is how many of those fringe playoff teams, all the teams in the AL Central, which are currently under 500, the Mariners, who I know they're neck and neck there with the Red Sox, and you could talk about the Angels, all right, whatever. Those teams, how are they going to be a part of this race, knowing that the trade deadline is on the 31st at 6 p.m., so it's 3 weeks from tomorrow, and how they're going to be able to see if they could buy. And they're not going to buy big. Obviously, they're going to buy relievers or a veteran bat. They're not going to go big game hunting by any stretch. So it's a situation where are those teams, and in the National League, it's a smaller list, but whether the Reds, and that's the team that intrigues me the most because the Giants, as we've seen, they've made big moves already. And I don't know, they may make a move for a reliever or somebody else. Who knows? Because the Giants, as you've seen here, they're definitely going all in. What the Padres do, and Dylan Cease is a guy that could be on the block, and that's a team that's selling, and they're in the thick of the wild card race. Excuse me, why am I yawning here? Maybe I need more water. But for what's going to take place, which could be a barren wasteland of a playoff chase, the divisions, to me, 3 of them are already a wrap. That is the AL West, NL West, and the AL Central. And I don't care. I don't want to hear that, oh, if the Mariners or the Giants or even the Padres, oh, well, they're now 4 back. Knock on my door when they're at least 2 back. And not even 3 back, because to me, the Tigers, they're already going to win the AL Central. And the Astros, I think they're going to be smooth sailing for them. Now, the other three divisions are wide open, as we know, AL East, NL East, and the NL Central. So you do have 3 races there. But the wild card races, because that's where most of the juice is going to be, where you have, let's say, 4 or 5 teams chasing for 1 or 2 spots. Well, you may not even have that. And that's why I think the second half is going to be predicated on what those wild card teams do. Now, are those wild card teams going to be threats to go deep into October if they reach the playoffs or get to a World Series? Well, we have seen it happen. I mean, the Arizona Diamondbacks went to a World Series as a wild card, and they won 84 games 2 years ago. So it isn't out of the realm of possibility that you could get a team that is a 5 or 6 seed in either the AL or NL and make a deep run. It could happen. But we have to wait to get to that point to see. Now, how I look at it is that even with the AL Central teams, who obviously are not great, or an Angel team that, I mean, are they really in the race? I guess you have to say so at this very moment, despite them being under 500 as well. But do you expect them to get deeper into the month, to make a move or 2, and then be in this race by, let's just say, the middle of August? So a month from now, will those teams, Twins, Royals, Guardians, Angels, and in the National League, the Reds, D-backs, because even the D-backs are behind the Reds. Teams like that, will they be in the running for a wild card spot when we get to this time next month? And if they're not, for some reason, that's going to be a problem. And baseball, the Baseball fan's going to be there. The casual, average, even good sports fan, they may say, to hell with this, I'll wait till October. And that's what baseball doesn't want. And as a tried and true baseball fan, and I love baseball, that is my first love, that is going to be tough sledding for them to have any buzz or any relevance for the teams that are going to be in the running. And if they fall out of it, I just got a text, so that's why I'm a little distracted, so my apologies. A team that is going to be in the running, if they fall off, and you're only going to have a team or two that's going to battle it out, yeah, it'll be juicy. Yeah, it'll be intriguing. But you want to have more teams, because the more chaos, the better. And that's where you reel in the average fan. That's where you reel in the casual fan. And people say, well, Jay Reels, if they're not baseball fans or if they're not diehard sports fans or whatever, they're not going to care at all. Well, you never know. Because if there's a team like the Tigers last year, and I get it, maybe not everybody was hanging on every game that the Tigers had down the stretch. Remember, they were, 31-10, and they made the postseason, and they actually got to a game 5 of the division series. So, yes, and I understand baseball is regional. I get it. It's not like the NFL where if Jacksonville is 8-5 and they're tied for first place in the AFC South, that the average, even just a regular football fan, will be like, oh, wait, Jacksonville, who are they playing today? I get it. Whereas Detroit, big market, a team that's played there a million years. I mean, Ty Cobb, and that's all you need to say. Hank Greenberg. I mean, seriously, we're talking about a team that's been around 150 years. But the average fan, they would care less that the Tigers are in a pennant race, even if they live outside of the city limits of Detroit, or if they're from Florida or from Des Moines, Iowa. I get that. But I remain hopeful as a baseball fan, as a sports fan, to have any juice, any buzz that the sport certainly needs for people to follow, for people to watch, for people to be on top of. Because let's face it, we know the NFL rules the roost. We know that they reign supreme, the impenetrable shield, the NFL. And in that regard, the NFL doesn't need any more publicity. They don't need any more attention because they get plenty of it. Where baseball, I get it. It's a 20th century sport. It's a sport that has deep-rooted history, unlike any other sport. Now, you could argue maybe college football, maybe even boxing, maybe even horse racing for that matter. But when it comes to the 4 major sports, sorry, even the NFL doesn't have what baseball has. And we could argue that back and forth. And yeah, there may be football fans be like, Jay Reels, you're nuts. You're crazy. I mean, Paul Brown, George Halas, etc. I mean, come on. Are we really going to go there with that? We're talking turn of the century, New York Giants, John McGraw. We're talking about Giants, Dodgers, Yankees, 3 teams that played in 3 different boroughs. We're talking Connie Mack. We're talking turn of the century, Ty Cobb, Rogers Hornsby. I mean, baseball goes deep. And I'm not even talking Babe Ruth just yet. I mean, please, Walter Johnson, Cy Young, Christy Mathewson. NFL doesn't have that. And NFL has more players than baseball on a team. And I get it. The offensive linemen in the 30s, if you want to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers when they were inducted into the NFL in 1933, nobody's going to remember them. But, and right, the same can be said for the second baseman of the New York Giants back in the 19-teens. But you have deep history with the sport. So baseball should be a part of our consciousness, but it's not because the NFL has just taken everything, swallowed up, and spit out. NBA, not on the level of the NFL, but their popularity is pretty big. And baseball's just like, eh. And if you haven't watched, one of the reasons why baseball has a problem is because they do not market their players, which I talked about on my YouTube channel at JReal, so you definitely want to check that out. I just posted it 2 days ago. It was about the whole Jacob Misiorowski. I know he had pitched an inning last night, and he gave up, I think, a hit. I don't know if he struck out anybody. He may have struck out one batter. But I talked about Misiorowski, but then I talked about baseball's bigger problem. and how if they want to keep up with the Joneses, they have to do better than market their players. That's all there is to it. And I know I'm all over the map right now. Let me get to a comment here. Just kind of break it up. Baseball purist. I wonder if the Cardinals going to buy or sell. I would think they'd buy. I mean, how many games are they back right now in the division? All right, they're 7 in the loss, 6.5 back. And in the wild card, and I didn't mention them as far as the wild card goes, and I should have. So that's my error there. I mean, they're literally 2 games back of the Padres. A game and a half, but 2 in the loss. Because that's the big number there. So they should buy. Now, who knows? Would they even think about selling the Miles Mikolas of the world or the Brad Helsley's or now I don't know if they're going to trade Nolan Arenado. Guys like that. But it's a situation where the Cardinals, they'd be stupid, and their attendance has been actually poor because I believe they had a game a few nights ago. I forgot what night it was. But they had a game where it was, and that was Ryan Helsley. I think I said Brad Helsley. I think I'm thinking of Brad Halsey, the old Yankee lefty, who I believe, rest in peace. Let me make sure I say that right because I don't want to be off kilter with that. Brad Helsley. Remember him, the lefty? Oh, Halsey, right? What's his name? Yeah, Brad Halsey. Yeah, he did pass away 2014. So I'm right on that, sadly. Rest in peace to Mr. Halsey. And as far as the Cardinals and their situation, I would just want to try to stand pat, or even better yet, try to make some moves to see whether or not that they could get in the wild card. Because as you all know, it is a crapshoot. So I don't know if they're going to do that. I mean, I'm looking at Reno Sonny Gray, Steven Matz. Maybe they trade Steven Matz somewhere. I don't know. Steven Matz, I know, it's 34 years old. I remember when he came up with the Mets in 2015, which obviously was 10 years ago. And look at he's 34 years old. Where does the time go, people? Please. But as far as baseball appears, what you said, I think they should buy. I don't think they should sell. Nike, last night, A-Rod predicted Yankees Dodgers. Jeter said Yankees Cubs. Don't count the Mets. Yeah, they're going to go with, obviously, the teams that they were a part of. I mean, A-Rod, Yankees, Dodgers. Are we going to see that again? I'm not so sure about the Dodgers either. And the only reason why I say that is because, all right, granted, you could say, well, hey, they barely had a pitching staff last year. Obviously, Ohtani didn't pitch. They didn't have Tyler Glasnow, et cetera, and they still won a World Series. I get that. But to do that 2 years in a row, I don't know. And I know Jeter, Yankees, Cubs, Boston Dodgers. Of course, they're going to go chalk. To me, they really would have said something, and they said, you know what? I'm going to say Brewers, Blue Jays. Now, that would have been a World Series pick. But, of course, they're going to go safe. Not surprised there by any means. But, no, going back to the first half, though, or to the second half preview, I really think that we all know the teams that right now in both leagues that are going to make it. National League, it's going to be Mets, Phillies. It's going to be Cubs and or Brewers. I think Cubs and Brewers will make it. Dodgers, now it's just a matter of it's going to be Padres, Giants, or Cardinals. That's going to round out your 6. American League is a little bit more wide open, but automatically Tigers, Astros, I would think Yankees, Blue Jays, and then the other 2 teams is pretty much take your pick. Is it going to be the Rays? Is it going to be the Red Sox? Do you think Seattle? And I think it's going to be one of those 3 teams. I don't think KC, Minnesota, Cleveland, or even the Angels. Nah. So I think the National League is a lock 5 teams, and who's the 6th team? And the American League is a lock 4 teams. Should I even call Toronto a lock? That's a little dicey, but I'll say that right now just for argument's sake. And then you have 2 teams that are up for grabs to see whether or not they're going to get the wild card. And that's what I mean. That's where baseball, they're going to need as much juice as possible. And when you think you have pretty much 5 of the 6 teams in the National League already locked in, or overall 9 of the 12 teams that qualify for the postseason are pretty much a lock, doesn't leave a lot more for discussion as far as drama or anything like that, unless a lot of these teams come back to the pack. And therefore, you're going to have a situation where or a team that's going to now all of a sudden go on a run where they're going to be a part of the wild card. And next thing you know, you have 5, 6, 7, or 8 teams that are going to be part of the mix. Because, yeah, the Diamondbacks, I included them in here now. But, and yes, I understand 2 years ago they did get to a World Series, but do you really trust them? And their pitching staff has taken a hit. Now, there's been rumors about maybe even Zach Gallen getting traded or Merrill Kelly. So does that mean that they've already punted on the season? I can't say they have, because how far back are they in the wild card right now? They're 3 games under, and they are 5.5, 6 and a loss. It's not insurmountable, but they're going to have to be one of those teams like the Tigers. They're going to have to go on a bender to where they win 30 out of 40 in order for them to be in or qualify for the playoffs. Because after that, the Marlins, Braves, forget about it. Those teams aren't making the playoffs. And people say, oh, what about the Braves? You never know. Braves are 11 under. So they're going to have to go on that 30-10 run in order for them to even sniff the wild card. And who do they start off coming right out of the break? They play the Yankees. And not that they've been world beaters, but still, that's not going to be an easy series for them. So this is where baseball in the second half, and I'll get into more of it in the podcast tomorrow as far as teams that I think they'll make a run, teams that – but right now it's really hard to gauge because, yes, we can look at July 31st to see who buys and sells and which teams are serious and which teams have backed off. All right, that's certainly a good barometer, but at the same time, you still have to think about these teams that are in striking distance to get to that final wildcard spot. And forget about divisions. There's no way, unless you're within a couple of games, obviously Mets, Phillies, also Cubs, Brewers, and then the Yankees with Boston and Toronto. They're all separated by, 3 games? That is a different story. But when you have teams that are 6 out, 7, and beyond, there's no way. I'm not even going to include those teams. So I'll get into a little bit more on the podcast tomorrow on which teams that I think could make a run. And this is without forecasting what the trade deadline is going to be. But let's face it. If you're the Royals, if you're the Guardians and the Twins, you're not going to go out there to try to trade for Sandy Alcantara. Or you're not going to try to go out there and trade for a lockdown closer. I don't know if they're going to pick up the phone to call the A's for Mason Miller. And if they do, God bless them. But, right, their plan is going to be more predicated on getting that veteran bat that still has some pop, but is a far cry from what he once was 3-4 years ago. Or a veteran reliever. Or a third starter on a team where it's not going to cost as much as if you were trying to get an ace a la Alcantara. So, yeah, I'm going to base it pretty much on their reputation. A team that is maybe make a couple of deals, but not a splash deal where you're going to say, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Where even the Mets, for that matter, I don't know if there's going to be any splash deals, but I would think that they're going to make significant moves to upgrade their bullpen, to maybe bring in a center fielder, and that center fielder could be Cedric Mullins, who, with a change of scenery and with a good glove, and even though he has some pop, but he's batting, 212 or somewhere around there right now, then who knows? Maybe he could provide that lift for a Met team that needs a center fielder in the worst way. No offense to Tyrone Taylor, very good glove, but we all know he's going to bat 8th in a lineup that, when you get to the bottom, he's a borderline automatic out. So I'll get into that more tomorrow and really get a good feel as to what I think these teams will do once, forget about the trade deadline, but once we get to the second half, which starts Friday, and how they will fare. So complete assessment of that on the podcast tomorrow, Apple, Spotify, of course, here on YouTube at JReels. Any other baseball notes to get to here? Any other comments to get to here? All right, baseball purists, let me see what you got. I'm predicting Tampa Bay Rays to take the last part. Then take Miami Lone Depot. Oh, interesting. Right, because they will play at Steinbrenner Field. If they host a wild card, that means they have to get the 4th spot. Or if they win a division, I get that too. But if it is a wild card and if they're not hosting, obviously they'll be on the road, so they will not have a home game until they get to the division series. And then that's when they'll play at Steinbrenner Field. But beyond that, now, is that official that they'll go to Lone Depot Park for the NLCS, baseball purist? If you could confirm that, I'll appreciate it. I'll get you your 3 predictions afterwards. Now, that's the one thing baseball doesn't want, because if the NLCS is going to be in Miami, the 4,000 Tampa Bay Ray fans are not going to drive down I-75 to then go across to 95 South. I mean, that is a 4.5-hour car ride. So I'm sure baseball is the last thing that they'd want for the Rays to play even an NLCS, an ALCS there in Miami. I'm sure they would have to suck it up and play an ALCS at Steinbrenner Field. World Series, though, if Tampa does happen to make it, that would be a very interesting question, and one that you can understand why that they would play in Miami if that's the case. So we'll see. Obviously, that's way on down the road. Let's see what Tampa does. Obviously, you picked them to take the last wild card spot, but remember, they would be on the road at the 3rd-seeded wild card team and not have a home game. So, but if they do win that series, they will have 2 home games in the division series. My 3 predictions. 1, Yankees will trade for best player. Now, who's that best player? Is it Eugenio Suarez, which could bring also Zach Gallen back for their rotation? Now, Dodgers starters will. Yeah. From your lips to God's ears, or the baseball God's ears, Mets will win the World Series. Dodger stars will continue to get hurt, as they always do. I mean, Blake Snell, have you even seen him? I know Tyler Glasnow came back. Roki Sasaki, another guy who's MIA. And the Mets will win the World Series. So baseball purists have to ask you, why do you think the Mets will win the World Series? I hope that's the case. Nike, Mets need to catch on the worst way too. I know if Francisco Alvarez, whenever he comes back, if his bat starts to wake up, then he'll be your everyday starter. Until then, Luis Torrens is your guy and Hayden Senger. I mean, what are you going to do? Tampa Bay Playoff Stadium is a guess. Oh, all right, it's a guess. No, that's a good one. Listen, I certainly take that into account. I don't know if they'll do that in an ALCS. World Series, though, they may have to really consider that, because to play that game or to play that series, if they win the American League in a minor league stadium, it's not going to look good. I don't want to say it's not going to look good, but it just goes to show how baseball will be ridiculed. And I think they would be ridiculed if you have them play in a 10,000-seat stadium. Of course, it wasn't their fault. It was Mother Nature having a play in all this. But, yeah, for the very casual baseball fan, that if it happens to be Rays and Mets, and they say, wait a minute, that's where the Rays play? That looks like a minor league stadium. And then, of course, you're going to get the jokes from the average sports fan to say, oh, how can they play in that stadium? That's a joke. It's not a major league facility, blah, blah, blah. I know. It's a mess, but obviously it's a long way from now and then, so we certainly don't have to get wrapped up or even worry about that. All right, baseball purist. Yeah, well, listen. Here's another thing that I'm thinking. I don't know if this is going to be fuel. I don't think it will be fuel to the fire. But could you imagine that being snubbed by the National League All-Star team? And I understand it was important for Soho because you want to get that $100,000, which to me, that's, you can find that in his sofa cushions. But who knows? Maybe he'll use that as just an addendum to him not making the All-Star team and wreaking havoc throughout the National and the American League throughout the rest of the season. And who knows where that could lead him to. But yes, I think Soto's a guy that has played well since the start of June. He's hit a ton of home runs, and obviously he's going to be a key contributor to this team down the stretch to see how far they go into October. Can they convert a football stadium to Tampa for the Rays? That's a good one, Nike. I don't know if that Raymond James Stadium, unlike Miami, because they remember when the Marlins played there before moving to Lone Depot Park, they had those removable bleachers. Well, they weren't removable, but they were able to be accordion style, in and out. I don't know if Raymond James Stadium has that. And if they did, that would be a good place to have it. But because I don't think they do, therefore they can't use it. And of course, if they don't have that situation where they can move the seats in and out, you and I can hit a home run out of left field. That'd be like 200 feet, and they can't do that. So that would scratch that idea out altogether. Now, as far as, yes, I went through the second half, as you know, how it'll unfold. I think it's going to be, and I'll wrap this up and move on to the next thing. How it'll unfold is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams involved with the wild card. I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest or intrigue, especially to the average fan. And not to say it's going to be a snooze fest, but yeah, you want to have a lot more teams in the mix. And based on everything that I've chronicled and detailed, I don't think that baseball is going to have that bulk of 5 or 6 teams that are going to fight for 2 or 3 wildcard spots. Or the division races are going to heat up so much to where it's going to come down to the last day. We haven't seen that in the divisions in forever. And that's the reason for the wild card, because at least there's a safety net for those who can't win a division, that they at least have the wild card. But how that plays out, again, a lot of these teams could fall off. The Cardinals, the Reds, those in particular, where you still have the Giants, the Diamondbacks are another team that could fall off. So how I look at it is that unless these teams are going to start playing well, and the teams that are 3 or 4 games under 500 or 7 or 9 games out, let's say the Braves, if they don't start to make a move pretty much coming out of the gate at the All-Star break, yeah, it's going to be, you may hear more crickets than you hear fans roaring in excitement for what could be a fascinating wild card or playoff chase. That's just how I see it. I'll unpack more of that tomorrow on the podcast, which you'll have to listen to or watch, for that matter, here on YouTube or Spotify. If you listen to Spotify, you can also get the video there. All right, I have to bring this up because today there is one training camp that is open in the NFL. And that is the Chargers, who the Hall of Fame game is 3 weeks from tomorrow. They'll play the Lions. And a lot of the training camps open next week, but I know the first 2, Chargers and Lions, they open up early because they have the Hall of Fame game. And with that being said, the Jet fan I know has to be geeked up. And I get it. They're off season. You bring in Justin Fields, who I liked. He was in Pittsburgh last year. I'm a Steeler fan, as you know. Obviously, we don't know how he's going to play this year. But there were no-brainers how they had to re-up Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. I know Sauce Gardner's star is fallen a little bit, but I would think to have those 2 guys who are very important guys on their team, in their lineup, week in, week out, they, of course, had to do it. You had Wilson, now one of the highest paid receivers, Sauce Gardner, one of the highest paid cornerbacks. And yeah, they don't have to worry about those guys for years to come. And hopefully starting this year, to where their offense could mature, it could grow. Maybe they'll have a bit of more of a better running game to help out Justin Fields. And we all know Justin could run with the ball. So yeah, I mean, those are no-brainer moves by the Jets. It's not as if they were going to let one of those 2 guys out of the building, or both for that matter. But yeah, those were moves that had to be made. Because if you're a Jet fan, if you think that those moves weren't smart, or I gave him too much money, then obviously you're not paying attention, because we know what the market is for wide receivers in this climate. We know what the average salary is going to be, et cetera. So I look at what has transpired over the last 48 hours as, all right, kudos. The GM was named Doug Moogie, did his job. I think it's his name, Douglas. Oh, I don't know. Does he go by Doug? Or is it just Doug Moogie? Hold on. Yeah, I guess Doug. I said Doug Moogie, or Darren Moogie, was whatever his name is. Darren Moogie, yeah. I said Doug. That just goes to show you how much I'm not on top of the Jet GM situation. I got his last name right, Mougey, but all right, see some comments here. Let's get to it. Savannah Bananas played at 65,000 for Raymond James Stadium. Right field was 240. Oh, you see, that's the thing. Also, the right field. So the left field was deep enough, and the right field 240. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's Savannah Bananas. We know the roadshow that they are. They are the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. And left field was 460. Yeah, I mean, that was a bomb. I hear that. So, yeah, that's why it wouldn't work if the Rays made it to the ALCS or the World Series where they could play those two series at Raymond James. Nah, not going to work. Yes, and I did see that there, baseball purist. Right, Floridian home build, I think out of Jacksonville. And Stu Sternberg, the current owner, listen, good for him. Now, let's just hope that the new owners will build, and I think they'll probably build. They should be in Tampa. They shouldn't be in St. Pete. And if they were going to be in St. Pete, they need to be by the bridge, because I have family that lived in St. Petersburg, to where not only let's say if you get out of the airport to where the bridge is to go from Tampa to St. Pete, it's not that far from the airport. It's not even, what is it? 3/4 of a mile, if that. But then you got to cross that bridge, which I believe is 4 miles. And then once you're in St. Petersburg, you got to go south, probably, I don't know, if I had to guess, 8 to 10 miles. So, yeah, it's a mission from Tampa. And if they're the Tampa Bay Rays, they need to play in Tampa. They're not the St. Petersburg Rays. And I know it's easy for me to say because I don't live there and I'm not a fan of the baseball team. But, yeah, they have to push that team closer to Tampa, even if it was on the other side of Tampa and St. Petersburg right there. But there are a bunch of housing developments there. So you're not going to build a stadium where it's going to clog that much more traffic and just have a ton of congestion. That's why they have it all the way south there, almost at the tip of St. Petersburg. They should just have it in Tampa. Try to build it near the football stadium. I get that they have the Yankee complex there too for spring training. Why not do it there if there is room? I understand they may have to maybe knock down some buildings or whatever. But to me, that would be the solution to Tampa and the stadium situation altogether. Just have it there in Tampa, near the airport, near the complex, and where the Buccaneers play, and call it a day. I know easy for me to say, but still. So, yeah, that's what you have with the Rays situation, and that's what you pretty much have there with that. And I appreciate that, baseball purist, for bringing that up, because I was going to talk about that on the podcast tomorrow. And obviously, anything that anybody else wants to bring up, Nike, baseball purist, whomever else is on, please feel free to do so. Your comments are certainly more than welcome. So, yeah, that's what I got with the Jets. What am I going to talk about more there? Their expectations, this and that. Let's go through training camp first before I even get to that. So that's what you have there. And then the golf, I'm going to spend a quick second on this. Tomorrow's the final golf major of the year. It's being played in Northern Ireland at Portrush. I know you had the Scottish Open the other day where Rory McIlroy was this close from winning, but he did not win. And it's always tough to gauge who's going to win this tournament because the weather's always crappy. It's windy. It's rainy. It's very not cold, but it's cool. And just to give you an idea, here's what the temperatures and what the weather's going to be like over the next few days for those who care. Royal Portrush weather. It's probably going to be, if I had to guess, and it's Northern Ireland. So obviously that is going to be a disaster over the next few days. Right now, I just saw it is currently 61 degrees. Now, mind you, what is it? They're 5 hours ahead, so it's about to be 6 o'clock there. But here's your weather for the next 3 days, or next 4 days, starting tomorrow, for the Open Championship, formerly known as the British Open. Tomorrow, 65 degrees. All right, not bad, but rain. Friday, 64 degrees. Rain. Saturday, 62 degrees. Rain. Sunday, 61 degrees. Rain. That's it. It's always a disaster when you watch the Open Championships because the weather is predictably unpredictable. You're not going to get 75-degree days and sunny. You're not going to get just bright skies. And no, it's always going to be windy. You're going to see guys with long sleeves. You may even see guys with windbreakers if they're going to play in the rain. This has the makings of a flat-out disaster. And I get it. It could add a little bit to the challenge of these golfers trying to get through 18 holes every day for 4 days. But remember, the U.S. Open at Oakmont that we just saw last month, and especially that Sunday where it rained, it was just ugly. And I understand the course was a challenge where you barely had guys over. As a matter of fact, the only guy that was over last month at the U.S. Open, and I believe it was one under, if I'm not mistaken. Let me bring up that leaderboard from a month ago. Yeah, we know J.J. Spawn. Yeah, he won at 1 under. Can I pull up the rest? I don't want him. I want to give me the champions. U.S. Open Golf Championship. Maybe this will do it. This is their website. He was 1 under for the tournament, and everybody else was either even or plus. Now, it's not to say this is what's going to happen this weekend, but because, again, that's more course-related than it is weather and course-related. But how this is going to turn out, to me, it's going to be intriguing, but it could also be an eyesore at the same time, because the last thing you want to do is see golfers hacking it up throughout the course of 18 holes, wind in their face, rain in their face, and understand it may be a steady rain or a mist. It's not as if it's a complete downpour, and who knows, maybe they have to postpone it for that at times. But yeah, the last thing I want to see is just inclement weather, golfers just trying to get to the next hole, doing whatever it takes to do so. But on top of that, just really struggle with the elements and the course. And it just doesn't make for appealing TV. In my eyes, it doesn't. I don't know about how you guys and gals feel. And I understand golf is a niche sport, so it's not like people are going to be watching. Obviously, I'm on top of it only because for what it is that I do. But yeah, that's what you have with the golf. Let me see what we got here. Changing topics. What do you got there, Nike? Do you think Amanda won, or did Taylor hang on to get the decision? I didn't see the fight. I know that was last Saturday? Amanda Nunes. I did not see it. Was it Amanda Nunes? I should know that. I know. I did not see it. I didn't even see highlights of it. So terrible job by me. I know I'm trying to get more into the UFC thing, and it's not because of women. I could care less. Men or women, I'd watch. But I did not watch it there Saturday night. And I know it was controversy in reference to that. Oh, it was Friday, right? Serrano. I know, I said Nunez. Again, I know people are going to say, Jay Reels, have you been under a rock? Are you half asleep? I know you've been yawning. What's going on with you today? I know, I didn't follow it. But you know what? I know there's a bout this week. Isn't Poirier fighting Saturday? And I don't even know the numbers. I know the UFC's. Yes. No, that's a fight I'm going to have to watch. Absolutely. Because Max Holloway, and that guy's a beast. And obviously Dustin Poirier is a legend. That is a fight I will watch. And I'll even talk about it on the podcast tomorrow. And you know what? Maybe I should even talk about that a little bit now as I bring that up. Yeah, these guys are obviously no joke in what they do. Now, am I going to do a complete breakdown of styles and things of that nature, striking, etc.? No, I'm not going to do that, but that is a fight I will watch. And Poirier's 30-9 and Holloway's 26-8, if mine serves me correct. Yeah, and that's UFC 318. And let me see, anybody on the undercard that's of interest? No, at least not that I see right now. And UFC 318. And yes, this is the third time that they're fighting that I was aware of. And I should know that. Did they probably had to split the first two. I think didn't Holloway win the last one? If somebody can help me out on that, Nike, if you're still there, Max Holloway versus Poirier. I'm sure they probably have a no, I don't see that. Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch this. I have to. There's no doubt. I have to watch this fight. And yeah, even get into a little bit of the history because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Holloway win the last one? No, I don't want 318. That's the forthcoming one. This must have been the first bout. Oh, yeah, this is 2019. That was 100 years ago. And Poirier. As I'm looking here. Oh, the two previous men, a featherweight bout, 143, where Poirier won by submission. So, wow. So, this is the first time they fought now in 6 years? Is that right? Let me see any comments on this. No comments. Yeah. With all that being said, I know I'm boring you with silence here. I will definitely check that out and give you a full review on Monday because, yeah, those two guys obviously are one of one, and I definitely want to see how that's going to turn out there on Saturday night, which they have that in Vegas, right? Is that ESPN Plus? Probably not. Saturday night main event. All right, we got it for lightweight. All right, and one last thing before I go, I do want to say, unless you have any comments, please feel free to throw them up there in the chat. And I appreciate you guys for hopping on board today. It means a lot, as you all know. Now, the last thing I want to say is I had a couple of critique videos that I put up and also a commentary video that I mentioned on Monday. I'm just kind of curious, what type of content would you like to see? Would you like to see more lives? Would you like to see more commentary, more critiques? Would you like to see less shorts? Because I do my shorts, my daily shorts, which yesterday was a quiet day. I only posted up the one short today to kind of lead into the live stream to talk about the All-Star game last night. I'm curious. And for those that are watching the replay, type it in, leave it. Let me know what you think. Because as much as I am multifaceted, I want to take the pulse or the temperature, you guys, to see what kind of content that you'd like to see more. And even if you can't come up with it right now and don't want to leave it in the chat, you can certainly post it after the live stream is over. And I'll be more than happy to take a look, take into consideration what it is that you think, feel, etc. And for sure, follow up sometime later on to see what the final result will be. And not to say that, oh, I'm not going to do shorts anymore or whatever. But again, it's just to kind of get an idea for what type of content you like to consume, whether it's the bite-sized 1 minute stuff, variety there, whether it's, I want more commentary stuff, which could be anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes, or more live streams because I love interacting with you, J Reels. Let me know. That's what I'm here for, to be the person to not only inform, but to entertain with credible sports talk, unlike any other. Because I don't know what other live stream or podcasts out there are doing what it is that I'm doing when it comes to this. So, I take big pride in that. And yes, I understand that for whatever reason, I screwed up some names and obviously screwed up people fighting Amanda Nunes, Amanda Serrano. And you know me, I'm transparent. Terrible job on my part. Even to my guy, Baseball Purist, where I should have known that there was no such thing as a swing off, or there was such thing as a swing off. I should know that as a diehard fan. And you're right. Probably should have. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm so far disconnected from the All-Star game that I couldn't even tell you. And I have shown that I'm right. Baseball Purist, what you got? I like your content, but YouTube rewards creators going viral. I know. Bat 1,000 every video to get traction. No, and that's the thing. And I appreciate you saying that, Baseball Purist. I mean, it goes without saying. But here's the thing. You're right about that. And all I could say to that is, of course, when anybody puts out content, they want to go viral. I get that. But I do so, or I plan to do so, and have planned to do so organically, naturally, and to do it with not only dignity, but also integrity. Because I'm sure you guys know, if somebody's going to come out with something and it just smells off, and I'll give you an example. There was a guy and actually shouted him out. I may have even shouted him out here. As a matter of fact, I did. I remember last week, I think I talked about the guy. He goes by The Flight Mike. He does a lot of basketball videos. And when the 3-team trade came out last week, where the Miami Heat, they traded for Norman Powell, the former Clipper, and then a bunch of players moved, Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson and et cetera. But for him to come out with a headline or a title that says, this NBA trade is insane, or this NBA trade is going to make all the difference in this offseason. I mean, will you stop? Yes. Did he reel him in with that, where he has over 1 million subscribers? And I'm not hating his or knocking his hustle by any means. But that's a hustle I don't want to be associated with. I want to do it the right way. And as evidenced by a couple weeks ago when I put up that Steeler video when the Steelers traded for Jalen Ramsey, and I wrote in my title, who the hell do the Pittsburgh Steelers think they are? And yeah, I understand it may have been like, oh, what? I got to check this out. But no, there's some teeth to that. I didn't just use that title to reel you in, but then to talk about something else. Or to use that title to reel you in, but it was like, oh, yeah, we are going to talk about the trade, but this is more about me rooting for my team. No. What I put out is what I put out. And, yeah, there'll be times I'll upset the apple cart. And when I did my critique videos, I shouted out Ashley Neville, who I understand she's a content creator that may not be on a lot of people's radar, but guess what? When Stephen A says something off the rails, I'm going to shout him out and I'll even tag him on it. Or even the current athlete, whomever that may be, whether it's Gilbert Arenas, or he's not a current athlete, but you know what I mean. The athletes that have their platform. And it could be a current one. It could be the Jalen Brunsons, the Josh Hart, they have their show. Or anybody. Everybody's fair game. But I'm going to do it not for the sake of doing it or to have an agenda. I'm going to do it with a purpose. And that's all my content. Because I'm not going to do it just to knock somebody or just to get on top of them or just to, no, I'm not going to do that. But if they say something, like if Stephen A comes out and he says something like, oh, the Knicks are going to win a championship next year. And granted that they could be the front runners to win based on how the East has unfolded. I get it. But if he says that, but he says it without any explanation, like he said, oh, the Knicks are going to win, right, because the East is weak and this is their year. I know it in my gut. I got to call him out on that because you have to back that up. That's like me saying right now on July 15th, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. Count on it. Why do you say that, Jay Reels? Because I'm a fan, and yeah, they got Aaron Rodgers now, and they're going to win. People are going to laugh at me. People are going to say you're stupid. You're basing this on nada, nothing, zilch. They want to hear something that has base to it, not something that's baseless. So, Nike, I see you. I see you, Brent and Val. So stand by for a second. I'm talking about content, and if you check I don't know if you could still see the contents if you could scroll up. For Brent and Val, who just got on board, can you see contents that were made maybe 10, 15 minutes ago? If you just hopped on board, just let me know. I'm just curious. So, yeah, we're talking about content, and just to piggyback off of what the Baseball Purist said, he said, I like your content, but YouTube rewards creators' videos going viral. You basically need to bat 1,000 every video to make or you make to get traction. And that's why with that Steeler video, that was my first commentary video I got. Now, granted, it wasn't 50,000 views or 100,000 views. It was 2,700. But it's a start. And that's how I want to build. Yes, I wish I had more than 1,000 subscribers. Yes, I wish I had a lot more where I could start gaining some ad revenue, start making some money, because I do this full-time, people. It's not as if I'm doing this as a hobby and I got a side gig or I got a full-time gig where, yeah, I'm still getting paid working my 9 to 5. No, this is my 9 to 5. This is really my 24-hour to 5. And I know I sounded stupid, but you know what I mean. But yeah, so, and I totally get that. They're going to reward people that go viral. But I'm not going to go viral based on me compromising my work or my word, my integrity, etc., just to hope to get a video that gets over a million likes or a million views, and in the process, I get 10,000 subscribers. Sounds nice. I mean, it really does. But I'd rather do that on a piece of work that I know I could stand on and have my head held up high, as opposed to, all right, let me just do this and that's that. And hope for a viral video and then pray for the best. No, I don't want to do that. Or even better yet, we were talking about the Jets earlier. They re-signed Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. That's like me saying Justin Fields is going to take the Jets to the Super Bowl. And I'm only going to bring that up because, Justin Fields knows Garrett Wilson from his days at Ohio State. People are going to say, so what? Are you kidding? Are you serious? Nobody's going to care about that. So that is the reason why I stay away from doing that, but do it the right way than trying to crack the code, so to speak, in order to get a viral comment out to where I get all the subscribers, I get all of the views, I get the likes, I get everything. But it's hollow. That's not how I roll. So, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, baseball purists. Can you not? All right, Nike, 5 to 10 minute segments. All right, yeah, and a lot of my commentary and all that is anywhere between like 10 to 15 minutes because, right, on the podcast, I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it because that's going to drag out the podcast. So let's say, for instance, I spent how long talking about the MLB All-Star Game or All-Star Shame? Yeah, I'll talk about that tomorrow on the podcast, but yeah, I'm not going to spend 10, 12 minutes on that because I got to get to other things. I don't want to have a 2.5-hour podcast. People are going to be like, I don't want to listen to this. I try to do it in a tidy hour. It goes an hour and 5, hour and 10, sometimes an hour and 15 minutes. And if there's a lot going on, I mean, it's even more tricky. But the thing is that I want to be able to package it in a tidy, neat fashion, get all my points across, but not to belabor it or to expound on it to the point where it's going to take up the whole show. This is why the commentary videos, like you said, Nike, the 5 to 10 minute stuff, is the stuff that I'm certainly going to do more of as time moves along because people could gobble that in bite size or, yeah, they're on the train or on the bus or whatever commuting that they can watch 5, 10 minutes of that and get their feel for what it is that I'm talking about. Where if you got to go to the podcast, obviously you got to search it. You got to check the timestamp. You got to make sure that, all right, do I have it aligned perfectly to where I can listen to this? And, by the way, it's going to be whatever. Half of what it would be than if I posted a video on my YouTube channel or did this live or had a scenario where, yeah, it was going to be a little bit more than the allotted time that it would have, let's say, for a podcast. So, yeah, I definitely plan to do more of those. And, of course, if you subscribe to the channel, it'll pop up. You'll get to see it. If you haven't, please subscribe. Again, I'd sincerely appreciate it. My guy, Brent, hope you guys are safe from flooding in your neck of the woods. Yes. I know Jersey got hit bad. And the crazy thing is that yesterday afternoon, I went to the pool with my grandson and his cousin. And my wife, who worked from home yesterday, said that, oh, my God, it stormed so bad here that the rain was pounding on the air conditioner. And I said to her, where I was at in the pool, which is about 20, 25 minutes north from where I live, it didn't even rain. There were clouds, but it was mostly sunny. So I wasn't affected where I was at. And thankfully, and hopefully whomever in the chat, I know Nike, you live in the tri-state area. Hopefully you didn't get pounded with rain. And I don't know where the baseball purist is from. Or Brent, I know you're north of the border. But I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much for inquiring. Yes, all is well with me. Safe, apartment. So, yes, that I greatly appreciate. Val, my guy, hands up to you. Brent. Oh, you can see the other comments? That's great to know. I appreciate that. Brent, stay your course. What you're doing is real. It's not just for eyes. This is why your channel and content will start moving. Yes, that is why. I totally agree. I don't want to do anything that's going to upset that apple cart. And that's why I'm also going to throw some lifestyle stuff in there. I know people want to see sports, but lifestyle as it pertains to what it is that I'm doing with the podcast, that is actually affecting the podcast. So it's not just to me like, oh, hey, here's a day in my life. I did a day in my life podcast version, which is obviously ties into that. And even if I did a day in a life, hey, here I am at the beach. I understand a lot of people don't care about that stuff, but maybe there are some people that say, hey, Jay Reels, I know you like to run. Do you have a running video? Or hey, Jay Reels, I know you love summertime. What is it that you do during a summer day? And I'd be more than happy to do that. So, yeah, that goes without saying. But for the channel, it's going to encompass everything. That's why I talked about the podcast on the channel, the shorts, which I may pivot at some point. I may not do as many as I do. The commentary, the critiques, all that stuff. And at the end, I think if you looked at my my main banner on the page, I also put life at the end because, hey, obviously we all live lives. We all love to talk about the toy department of life called sports, but obviously there's more to it than just that. So that's why every so often I may throw up a lifestyle video, which could intrigue you or not intrigue you. So, all right, baseball purists, what do you got? My favorite J-Reels videos are the Yankee player. Hey, yeah, you love those too? Yeah, and as a matter of fact, last year was perfect because, and I know I didn't really go off. It's weird. Maybe I'm weird. I know that last year, because the World Series, if you recall, it was Friday, Saturday, day off, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I had the podcast the following day. And of course, this year I'll have the live stream on a Wednesday if the Yankees do make it that far. But yeah, I got my pound of flesh, but it wasn't as much as you thought because I'm into analyzing the game and what's going on and what's happening. And yes, I did, of course, the Judge drop and Garrett Cole not covering first base, and we know what happened there. But yeah, I think I got on the Yankee case a little bit because I had to. And people can say, oh, you're a hater, or you're this or that. Oh, typical Met fan. Hey, listen, I'm not ashamed to say that I've seen enough Yankee World Series. Granted, they haven't won one and now going on 16 years. But I've seen enough Yankee World Series to last 50 lifetimes. And I don't want to see another one. I don't. Hopefully, I have another 3.5, 4 decades plus here on this planet. After that, if the Yankees want to reel off 5 in a row, 6 in a row, so be it. As long as I'm not here to witness it, that's all I got to say about it. So, but I appreciate that, baseball purists. You like those videos? I love them too. To me, that is the best day. That, quite frankly, that's the best sports day of the year. The day, the elimination day, because you know that there's a build-up to them being eliminated. And then once they are eliminated, the next day to talk about it that night, that's why, for those who follow me, for those who watch, every time the Yankees make that out to eliminate them from whether it's a regular season, postseason series, World Series, etc., the best thing I could say is another win so I can sleep in peace because I have to deal with these fans. I don't have to deal with them. Blah, blah, blah. We got 28 rings. Oh, please. That 27 ring garbage, that is like such a bandwagon poser answer that that's like me saying to a Jetta Giant fan, I'm a Steeler fan. Oh, yeah, we have 6 rings tied with New England, of course. But nobody cares. Steelers haven't won since 2008. And I'm going to come out and shout out, oh, yeah, we got more rings than you. Please. Now, if they so happen to win the Super Bowl this coming year, then I can brag all I want. And even then, I still wouldn't say, oh, we got 7 rings. I'll be like, no, we won this year. I can stand on the mountaintop and look down and say, yeah, what do you guys have? And can't say anything. But until then, I got to shut up. Oh, you're from BK. All right. Baseball purists, good to know. Other side of the Tri-Borough from where I'm at. And then Nike, for a few minutes, rain, thunder. All right, but obviously no flooding. That's good. Now, Brent, unfortunately, you got to leave or watch later. Sounds like a good show. Can't wait. Brent, you know, I appreciate all your comments. I appreciate your participation, everything that you've done since you hopped on board. And you know, I'm sincerely grateful for that. All right, people, your last chance. Let's get to it. Any other comments? Of course, there's not much going on in sports. Obviously, a lot of the baseball stuff. So any last thoughts in the chat room, whatever is on your mind, this is your last shot until next Wednesday. And hopefully next Wednesday we'll have a lot more. Obviously, a lot more baseball to cover. The trade deadline will be a week away because considering tomorrow's 2 weeks, we'll touch on that. Maybe a trade or two will have happened. We'll unpack that. NFL, I'm sure we'll get to whatever's going on in the NBA, NHL, golf, whatever. You know, I got you covered. This is the one safe space for those who are looking for their one-stop shopping for all their sports right here. I'm sure there are other places, and I'm sure there are other people that are trying to do the same thing, but just knowing that you're here means the world to me. It really does, truly does, and I hope you keep coming back, whether it's next Wednesday, the Wednesday after that, or even you stop by for a little bit like Brent did, in and out. Again, just knowing that you've thought of me, just knowing that I was on the brain to the point where it's like, oh, I got to listen to what Jay Reels has to say. Or, oh, you know what? I got to get Adam for this. Or, you know what? Let's see what he's going to bring up or discuss so we can talk about it. Again, I love it. Keep it coming. I'll be here each and every Wednesday, as you know. Anything unforeseen, you have to check the social media sites, but that'll do it. I don't see any comments unless something pops up. I'll shout you out and put it in the chat, but that'll do it. In the blood and the DNA, people. Sports is what I eat, breathe, drink, sleep, eat. Goes without saying. And I hope you're able to, that resonates with you wherever you may be, wherever you are, whether you are in BK, whether you are north of the border in Ontario, whether you're in CT like my guy Nike. Again, I thank you so much for passing by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is. I have to say with baseball and a few other things. New podcast tomorrow coming at you probably by noon, the latest, as I'll recap a little bit of what I said here, but also some other things too. And also more of that second half preview that I didn't really delve into because I had to save something. I had to save it for tomorrow. So check that out. And if you haven't subscribed, Apple, Spotify for the podcast. For those who like to listen to it, although you can watch it on Spotify as well. And, of course, here on YouTube, which I'm sure you guys already have subscribed. But if you haven't, and please share with your family, friends, foes, the good sports fan, the diehard sports fan, the kooks like us. And, yes, I mean, I don't know how much more I can thank you. I know it's redundant. I know that it's probably tiresome at this point, so I apologize. But again, I'm not one of those to be like, yeah, they hopped on board. All right, great. Fine. I'm glad you're on. And that's it. No, you have to be acknowledged. And you'll always be acknowledged as long as I'm sitting in front of this camera and microphone. So thank you again. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Of course, you can follow up here on YouTube or Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the J Reels Podcast, or on Instagram, J Reels only. Twitter, J Reels 1, just a number. The old-fashioned way, the J Reels Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals because whether you do or do not know, as you already know, this is what I love to do. This is why I quit my job, to pursue this full-time, to be a guy that's going to blaze a path and trail in this podcast space, to be among the ranks of those that are out there doing their thing, because I know I belong there and belong with those guys and women out there that are doing what they're doing, grinding on a weekly business, whether they do two podcasts a week or 2 podcasts on a live stream like yours truly, or critique videos or commentary videos or whatever. As long as I'm sitting in front of this microphone and camera, I will deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the water, the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The J Reels live stream always comes live, correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next Wednesday on the J Reels live stream, and of course on the podcast tomorrow, thanks for hopping on board on the flip, baby.